få noget lyd ud af mobilen. Og selvfølgelig noget headset i halløjse der, men den skulle jo stadig reagere.
Reconsidering the historic, reformed repudiation of Romanism. Brethren, let me share with you a summary of what will be found in a few moments in the body of this entire paper. A major change has occurred in the spirit and the relationship of evangelicals with the Roman Catholic. A major change has occurred in the spirit and the relationship.
Hvorfor kan I høre det? Det skulle I ikke kunne høre. Det er højtaler.
Dramatic nature appears more readily from a review of the historic Protestant antipathy against the Romanism and modern Protestant appreciation for the Roman Catholic Church. This old antipathy crystallizes in a provocative statement generally held by earlier Protestants, which is that this old antipathy crystallizes in a provocative statement generally held by earlier Protestants, which is that.
Tyder på, at den ligesom skulle ikke kunne optage indenfra. Jeg ved, hvor den får lyden fra. Skal der være nogen mikrofon i det her skulder? Jo, der er mikrofon der. Det kan være, den tager den. Hallo? Det er da ikke til at finde ud af, når der er så mange mikrofoner. Man ved aldrig, hvad de bruger. Der er mikrofon der. Den virker. Okay, fint nok. Hallo? Hvor har jeg de andre headsets, hvor der ikke er mikrofon i? Okay, vi har styr på, hvor mikrofonen er. Det er fint. Det kunne være fint, hvis jeg lige kunne finde de andre der. Okay. Desværre så ved jeg ikke, hvor de andre er, så, men det bliver vel som det er. Så kan vi prøve at se, hvad der sker, hvis jeg starter den der. Så holde de her væk fra mikrofonen, og så se, hvad der sker.
When Protestants protested, reconsidering the historic, reformed repudiation of Romanism. Brethren, let me share with you a summary of what will be found in a few moments in the body of this entire paper.
Så tydeligvis så får den lyden inden fra mobilen af, og det skulle den jo ikke kunne gøre. Den skulle jo ikke kunne optage indenfra, fordi det har Android og Google jo fikset, at man ikke kunne. Men det gør den jo til tilsyneladende alligevel. Det skulle den jo ikke kunne gøre. Den skulle jo ikke kunne optage. Men det gør den jo til tilsyneladende. Okay, lad os se her. Nå, men så kan I jo også høre med selvfølgelig. Det er også fint nok. Det var sådan set ikke helt lige meningen. Jeg har nogle hørebøffer, hvor der ikke er højt, eller hvor der ikke er mikrofon i. Og det havde jo været fint. Hvor var det mikrofonen, den ligesom var? Den er helt deroppe, okay. Den hænger og dingler der. Jeg er stadig syg, altså, men sådan er det jo. Nå, men så kan vi jo høre den der, så kan I høre den med mig. Jeg sad egentlig og lavede noget. Hvor er min... Okay, så er pinden nu blevet af. 2 sekunder. Så er der smidt pinden væk. Typisk. Stakkels. Let's go. Lad os prøve igen. Lad os se her. Jeg skulle egentlig ikke helst ikke have noget i ørerne, fordi mine ører kan ikke holde til at have noget i ørerne mere. Det er en eller anden idiot. Mig selv i henhold til at ødelægge mine ører med essential olier på et tidspunkt. Nå, men det er også. Og det er også irriterende, den skal flyve rundt på skærmen der. Men det... Ja, så skal jeg gå ind og sige, at programmet ikke har lov til bla bla bla. Det kunne selvfølgelig også være fint, men så kan jeg så ikke køre kamera mode. Ja, det kan jeg også, så kan jeg også fikse kameraet. Nå, anyway. Nå, men lad os få noget, det var sådan set det, jeg sad og lavede.
A major change.
Der vi go. Så skruer lidt ned. Jeg ved så ikke, om den skruer ned inde i... det kunne være spændende at vide, om den skruer ned.
Reconsidering the historic reformed repudiation of Romanism. Brethren, let me share with you a summary of what will be found in a few moments in this body of this entire paper. A major change has occurred in the spirit and the relationship of evangelicals with the Roman Catholic Church. Its dramatic nature appears more readily from a review of the historic Protestant antipathy against the Romanists and modern Protestant appreciation for the Roman Catholic Church. This old antipathy crystallizes in a provocative statement generally held by earlier Protestants, which is that the Pope is the Antichrist. This is a statement with nuances and a rich exegetical and historical defense rarely understood or appreciated today. The fact that so many Protestant leaders have affirmed this for so long challenges us to re-examine our own position. A recent modern poll shows that the spirit of historic Protestants has not become altogether extinct. One's attitude toward the Roman Catholic Church may well be an accurate measure of how well the label Protestant really applies to him. As long as the Roman Catholic Church continues to oppose the distinctive Protestant and biblical doctrines of sola scriptura and sola fide, a fundamentally positive Protestant-Romanist relationship is ill-advised and quite impossible. Will the Protestant reader stand boldly against the Roman Catholic Church? And now, I'm pleased to present to you the body of this paper.
I'll give me a break.
So sang Bob Dylan amidst the 60s social revolution, and so may we say of recent trends within evangelicalism and its general attitude toward the Roman Catholic Church. Admittedly, when it comes to fallen human nature, nothing really changes. The preacher observes,
så godt spørgsmål.
That which has been is what will be. That which is done is what will be done, and there is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which it may be said, see, this is new? It has already been in ancient times before. And another passage, do not say, why were the former days better than these? For you do not inquire wisely concerning this. Ecclesiastes 1, 9 and 10, and Ecclesiastes 7, 10. Well, not just hippies have advocated licentiousness, nor just modern Protestant friendliness toward the Roman Catholic Church. But still, there are seasons when the number and publicity of advocates increase. We are living in days when a spirit of ecumenical cooperation between the Roman Catholic Church and self-professed evangelicals, some even of a reformed identity, is growing. Obvious examples include the several Evangelicals and Catholics Together documents. There are now 5 of those as of this year. And these began to be produced in 1994 with the participation of evangelical luminaries Chuck Colson and J.I. Packer. Another evidence of a warmness of evangelicals toward the Roman Catholic Church in our day is prevalent praise for the late Pope John Paul II. And then also, I've noticed quite a warm welcome given by some evangelicals to Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger on his accession to the office of Pope and gaining the title Pope Benedict XVI. I'll give you one example of this positive attitude toward the Pope and the papacy. Billy Graham, for example, practically a pope of evangelicalism himself, and he has a long track record of strong support for the Roman Catholic Church and its pope. He was interviewed by Larry King on April 2nd this year, just after John Paul II had died. And Graham responded to the question from Larry King, "There's no question in your mind that he is with God now?" And Billy Graham replied in these words, "Oh, no. There may be a question about my own, but I don't think Karol Wojtyla or the Pope, I think he's with the Lord because he believed. He believed in the cross. That was his focus throughout his ministry, the cross. No matter if you were talking to him from a personal issue or an ethical problem, he felt that there was the answer to all of our problems, the cross and the resurrection. And he was a strong believer," unquote. Now, that this represents nothing less than a seismic shift of the prevalent attitude in evangelical and Reformed Christians over a period of centuries, and even quite a shift over the period of the last 50 years, becomes more readily apparent when the former consensus of Protestant reformers and their immediate successors, including the Puritans, is considered. And some of us find it alarming. The contrast between their views and today's apparent consensus is stark and startling upon first discovery. The almost universal judgment of our Protestant forefathers toward the Roman Catholic Church was that it was a false and apostate church. And their characteristic attitude toward the Roman Catholic Church was intense antipathy or hatred. Their confessions of faith and other writings clearly, explicitly, and forcefully repudiated leading Romanist doctrines and the institution propagating them. Romanism was such a great concern that one could deduce a fairly comprehensive summary of Rome's errors from an inductive study of the Westminster Confession of Faith, the Savoy Declaration, and the 1689 London Baptist Confession. Just look at what those confessions affirm and look at what they deny. And you can infer what the Roman Catholic Church affirms and denies because it's mostly the opposite of what those Protestant confessions say. Not everything in them is a swipe at Rome, but a substantial part is, maybe even a preponderance. Claiming adherence to such a Protestant confession while nurturing a fundamentally positive attitude toward the Roman Catholic Church would seem to be a great and obvious inconsistency. Friendliness toward the Roman Catholic Church could be warranted theoretically, but if so, it must necessarily start with the Protestant confessional ethos. The concept of truth in advertising is an application of the ninth commandment, thou shalt not bear false witness. And nowhere is it more important than in the religious realm. A man may be a friend of Rome or a Protestant, but not both at the same time in historic sense. It's helpful to consider the origin of the term Protestant. Ironically, a good succinct explanation is from a Roman Catholic source. The reader must appreciate that this following quote is expressed from a Roman Catholic Church point of view, but the basic facts appear to be undisputed by Protestants. And I would quote then the Roman Catholic explanation of the origin of the term Protestant.
I hate this.
The Diet of the Holy Roman Empire, assembled at Spire in April 1529, resolved that, according to a decree promulgated at the Diet of Rome, 1524, communities in which the new religion, and you realize, of course, when they say the new religion, they're talking about the faith of these Protestants. And it's not a new religion at all. That's a pejorative label they use to describe it. It's just the old biblical gospel. So communities in which the new, so-called new religion was so far established that it could not without great trouble be altered should be free to maintain it. But until the meeting of the council, they should introduce no further innovations in religion. Now, of course, what they're really referring to is reformations of apostate Christianity, but they call them innovations from a Catholic point of view. And should not forbid the Mass or hinder Catholics from assisting thereat. Against this decree, and especially against the last article,
I do wonder
the
if you could
adherents
make
of the new
the text
evangel,
bigger.
which is not, of course,
And
really
this
new, but
would be
the
nice.
old one and only true gospel. The Elector Frederick of Saxony, the Landgrave of Hesse, the Margrave Albert of Brandenburg, the Duke of Lüneburg, the Prince of Anhalt, together with the deputies of 14 of the free and imperial cities, entered a solemn protest as unjust and impious. The meaning of the protest was that dissentients did not intend to tolerate Catholicism within their borders. On that account, they were called Protestants. In the course of time, the original connotation of no toleration for Catholics was lost sight of, and the term is now applied to and accepted by members of those Western churches and sects which, in the 16th century, were set up by the Reformers in direct opposition to the Catholic Church. The same man may call himself Protestant or Reformed. The term Protestant lays more stress on antagonism to Rome. The term Reformed emphasizes adherence to any of the Reformers. Unquote from a Roman Catholic source. Now, the proposition they make here that Protestant and Reformed are interchangeable terms is interesting, but historically, the term Reformed may have become narrower than Protestant. In other words, there's a sense in which we could say not all Protestants today are Reformed. The term Reformed is generally associated with Calvinists in particular, and not all Protestants are necessarily Calvinists. And the term Reformed may be considered generally to exclude Lutheran, Anglican, and Episcopal denominations, rejecting, as they do, the regulative principle of worship and having somewhat more in common with Romanism in their, at least in their liturgy. The term evangelical, without qualification, has become so diluted now that it's almost useless as a badge of conservative and biblical Christianity. This paper is especially intended for those who consider themselves Protestant, Reformed, and conservative evangelical. Now, historian James A. Wiley, himself a Protestant, presents a sympathetic account for the origin of the term Protestant. And I quote from his noteworthy church history book. At Worms, Luther stood alone. At Spires, the one man has grown into a host. The no, so courageously uttered by the monks in 1521, is now in 1529 taken up and repeated by princes, cities, and nations. Its echoes travel onward, till at last their murmurs are heard in the palaces of Barcelona and the basilicas of Rome. 8 years ago, the Reformation was simply a doctrine. Now, it is an organization, a church. This little seed, which on its first germination appeared the smallest of all seeds, and which popes, doctors, and princes beheld with contempt, is a tree whose boughs, stretched wide in air, cover nations with their shadow. The princes renewed their protests at the last sitting of the Diet, Saturday, 24th of April. It was subscribed by John, Elector of Saxony, Philip, Landgrave of Hesse, George, Margrave of Brandenburg, Ernest and Francis, Dukes of Lüneburg, and the Count of Anhalt. Some of the chief cities joined the princes in their protestation, as Strasbourg, Nuremberg, Ulm, Constance, Reutlingen, Winsheim, Lindau, Kempten, Memmingen, Nordlingen, Heilbronn, Isny, St. Gall, and Weissenberg. From that day, the reformers were called Protestants. On the following Sabbath, 25th of April, the chancellors of the princes and of the Protestant cities, with 2 notaries and several witnesses, met in a small house in St. John's Lane, belonging to Peter Muderstadt, deacon of St. John's, to draw up an appeal. In that document, they recite all that had passed at the Diet, and they protest against this decree for themselves, their subjects, and all who receive or shall hereafter receive the gospel, and appeal to the emperor and to a free and general council of Christendom. On the morning after their appeal, the 26th, the princes left Spires. This sudden departure was significant. It proclaimed to all men the firmness of their resolve. Ferdinand had spoken his last word and was gone. They, too, had spoken theirs and were gone also. Rome hoists her flag over against hers the Protestants display theirs. Henceforward, there are 2 camps in Christendom. Unquote from J.A. Wyler. J.H. Merle d'Aubigné relates essentially the same account in his excellent book, History of the Reformation of the 16th Century. The famous church historian Philip Shaw confirms it further and makes these helpful remarks about the event. He says, "From this protest and appeal, the Lutherans were called Protestants, with good reason, if we look at their attitude to Rome, which remains the same to this day." And Shaw wrote this sometime before 1910. Unfortunately, that statement is really not true today. With the Catholic Lutheran Accord recently signed in ecumenical dialogue. In any case, back to Philip Shaw. He said, "It is the duty of the Church at all times to protest against sin, error, corruption, tyranny, and every kind of iniquity. But the designation, which has since become a general term for evangelical Christians, is negative, and admits of an indiscriminate application to all who dissent from popery, no matter on what grounds and to what extent. It must be supplemented by the more important positive designation, evangelical, the gospel of Christ, as laid down in the New Testament and proclaimed again in its primary primitive purity and power by the Reformation, is the basis of historical Protestantism and gives it vitality and permanency. The protest of Spire was based objectively upon the Word of God, subjectively upon the right of private judgment and conscience, and historically upon the liberal decision of the Diet of 1526. Unquote from Philip Shaw. Now, brethren, hearing all this about what the word Protestant means in its historic sense, is it possible that so-called Protestants in our generation have lost so much of their historical character, the label is no longer warranted? Where is the protest against Romanism? Any vigorous protest today seems a lonely relic, a blast from the past, if you will, out of step with modern sensibilities and discretion, even terribly fanatical, antiquated, and downright uncharitable. A few influential evangelical leaders have sounded the alarm concerning trendy ecumenism with Rome, including R.C. Sproul, Dr. T. James Kennedy, and John MacArthur. MacArthur, in particular, does not leave us wondering about his stance on the Roman Catholic Church and even his judgment about the late Pope's eternal destiny. That is Pope John Paul II. I quote to you from an interview with John MacArthur, where he said, "One question that has been raised or alluded to repeatedly is this: is the Pope in heaven? Numerous people have asked me that question. I'm always tempted to reply, is the Pope Catholic? After all, the Pope was the number one purveyor of Roman Catholic doctrine. The gospel he believed was no more sound than the gospel Rome has always taught. It is not the gospel of Scripture," unquote. Another outspoken advocate of old Protestantism is Richard Bennett, a former Roman Catholic priest who served for 21 years as a Roman Catholic priest. And now he has been, for some time, converted to Christ and a Reformed evangelist. His expertise on Romanism is conspicuous at his website, the Berean Beacon. He has helpfully summarized some Roman Catholic errors in a chart comparing quotes from Scripture and from the 1994 Catechism of the Catholic Church on topics including the basis of truth, salvation by grace alone, the nature of faith, Christ's atonement, and his place as the sole mediator between God and man, God's unique holiness, idolatry, and communion with the dead. And that is included in the appendix to this paper. Now, I ask you this question. Can you think of anything worse to say to Catholics today than this? The Pope is the Antichrist. Now, we can hardly imagine any more strident statement of opposition to the Pope and the Roman Catholic Church than this. And further, is there anything you can think of that would be harder for a Roman Catholic to hear and accept than that proposition? And yet, if it is true, silence is not golden. The old Protestants widely held to some sense of the provocative proposition. Probably not what we would initially suspect today. Consider a smattering of old quotes from respected Protestant leaders of the past. Martin Luther, for example, who lived from 1483 to 1546. He said this: "If there were nothing else to show that the Pope is the Antichrist, this would be enough. Dost thou hear this, O Pope? Not the most holy, but the most sinful? Would that God would hurl thy chair headlong from heaven and cast it down into the abyss of hell. Who gave you the power to exalt yourself above your God? God has commanded to keep faith and observe oaths, even with enemies. You dare to cancel this command, laying it down in your heretical anti-Christian decretals, that you have power to do so. And through your mouth and your pen, Satan lies as he never lied before, teaching you to twist and pervert the Scriptures according to your own arbitrary will. O Lord Christ, look down upon this. Let thy day of judgment come and destroy the devil's lair at Rome. Behold him of whom St. Paul speaks in 2 Thessalonians 2, 3, and 4, that he should exalt himself above thee and sit in thy church, showing himself as God, the man of sin, and the child of damnation. What else does the Pope's power do but teach and strengthen sin and wickedness, leading souls to damnation in thy name?" Reformer Thomas Cranmer, who lived from 1489 to 1556, referring to the prophecies in Revelation and Daniel, he said this: "Whereof it followeth Rome to be the seat of Antichrist, and the Pope to be the very Antichrist himself. I could prove the same by many other scriptures, old writers, and strong readers." John Knox, reformer associated with Scotland, 1505, 1572. He wrote to abolish, quote, That period.
Jeg kan selvfølgelig ikke koncentrere mig. Jeg ved ikke, om det er uploaden af mobilen, eller hvad det er. Men det går ikke særlig godt til synligheden. Det går meget langsomt. Det rammer mig. Jeg ved ikke. Men det går meget langsomt. Jeg synes ikke, det kan selvfølgelig også være strålerne fra mobilen, der... den uploader. I don't know. Jeg synes i hvert fald, jeg har meget, meget svært i øjeblikket med. Jeg gik ikke udmærket før, altså. Nu er det bare gået fuldstændig. Jeg kan slet ikke tænke, altså. Den er fuldstændig stået af. Jeg synes ellers, jeg havde det kørende før, havde jeg ikke i henhold til at lytte til noget. Ja, jeg sad der og lyttede til, andre foredrag. Så hvorfor skulle jeg lige pludselig have besvær med det? Det eneste forskel er, at jeg nu uploader, altså. Fra mobilen af. Det er den eneste ting, der har ændret sig. Jeg kan slet ikke. Jeg ved ikke. Den går helt galt, altså. Jeg kan slet ikke overhovedet samle mig i henhold til at skrive tingene ned, altså. Jeg ved ikke. Den går helt galt. Det var helt utroligt. Jeg skulle prøve at stoppe stream, og så se, om det bliver bedre igen, eller hvad. Altså, den er helt gal, altså. Og se. Nefesh. Yehudi. Homia. Okay, så har vi Ulfate Mitra Kadima. Hayen Letsion. Sofia. I hvert fald, Sofia. Yeah, probably just, it doesn't seem to be too, so. Sofia, nope. Det ser ud som om det er en toer. Er der nogen toer sådan, ja, okay, Sofia. Så skal vi have en. Ups. Hvad laver den nu? Sofia. Så ja. Sofia. Synes jeg stadig ikke, det går særlig godt, altså. På min stakkels hjerne, altså. Jeg sad ellers der uden problemer. Altså, så noget mere olie. Skod. Det er slut på kanelolien her. Der er en flaske mere. Få lidt forskellige essential olier i mig. Sofia. Punktum. Hvad der kommer. Jeg tror faktisk, det skal være punktum. Nej. I hvert fald ikke i den her version. Sofia. Ulfa. Nej, så er det ikke Ulfa. Så er det hvad? Så er det bare... et eller andet galt her. Nej. Så kører den ja. Okay. Ups. Hvor er jeg? Jeg har sat den der, okay. Så skal vi se. Jeg overgiver. Jeg tror, jeg stopper livestream der. Jeg ved ikke. Den er helt gal. Jeg kan slet ikke. Og jeg ved ikke, om det er stream, eller fordi jeg har siddet i noget tid allerede. Men i hvert fald, det er jo bare begyndt til sydenladende med livestreamen der, og får virkelig svært ved at lave noget som helst, altså. Det er ikke fordi, det gik hurtigt i forvejen, men nu går det ekstremt langsomt på grund af min hjerne. Den har meget svært ved at... det er som om det går i hele legemet. Nå, anyway. Jeg stopper livestream.